The last thing we have to talk about before we wrap up this episode of the podcast, Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen called out sports media on Twitter a couple of days ago. Now, the tweet said this: these sports analysts starting to get real disrespectful on TV. It's one thing to have an opinion, but to say what another person can and cannot do, tarnishing people's names because of a bad season or a bad game as if they know it all. See us in person and act all cool. Hashtag puppets. And a lot of people's response to this was, you're mad because people are doing their jobs. And a lot of people have to understand, because I definitely understand where Keenan Allen is coming from. As somebody who, I guess I can include myself in the sports media world. Like, what Keenan Allen is basically saying is this: it's okay to have an opinion about people's performances, but a lot of sports analysts on TV, they make it more than just their job. Like, they make it personal. And even though it may come off to the majority of you guys as them just doing their job, you got to also remember that these guys have to bring in viewers. They have to, draw ratings. So they normally add a little bit more oomph to their takes. And oftentimes that will include them piling on the player. And sometimes you'll have some analysts out there, I'm not going to say that no names, that continually harp on the same player over and over and over and over again. And then when an athlete catches you in person, you want to try to act like you didn't say what you said, and you want to try to justify it and saying, oh man, I was just doing my job. You see, that's the problem with society. You get what I'm saying? Like, we don't like to hold ourselves accountable for what we say. You get what I'm saying? Like, just because it's sports analysts' jobs to talk about players doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held responsible and accountable for what they say. You get what I'm saying? Like, any athlete has a right to be upset with anything that a sports analyst says about them, just like we have the right to be upset about anyone's opinions that they may have about us, rather we like it or not. But too many people defend sports analysts. Like, there is a proper way to criticize somebody without making it personal. And a lot of people keep saying these analysts are just doing their jobs, they're not making it personal. But if you watch some of these takes, they make it personal. They literally, like, not all the time, but depending on, the kind of relationship they have with the player, if this is a player that they've traded jabs with in the past, they will continue to pile on with them, and they'll continue to go at them and things like that. Like, a good example, well, I know I said I wasn't going to drop no names, so I guess I lied, my bad, but Colin Cowherd. So Colin Cowherd continually goes at Baker Mayfield over and over again after one bad game. Doesn't really talk that much about when Baker Mayfield has good games, but mainly only talks about Baker Mayfield when he's doing bad. Skip Bayless continually harps on LeBron James. Like, literally, like, every day it's a Skip Bayless, LeBron James hate tweet. Like, it's a difference between professionalism and going a little bit overboard with your criticism. Like, there's a difference between professionalism and making it personal. And too many times, sports analysts on television don't realize that they're making it personal. Like, it's okay to criticize players, and it's going to be players out there who are going to have soft skin, who may be a little bit more sensitive to light criticism than most. You're going to have some who have tough skin, who don't really care about it at all. But I definitely do understand where Keenan Allen is coming from. And a good amount of people normally agree with players, and there are a lot of people who agree with Keenan Allen, but there are also a couple of people out there who, disagree, saying that how can you get upset and try to press somebody for doing their job. Like, I definitely feel like there is a proper way to having constructive criticism. And no matter what, like, no matter how polite you try to criticize somebody, like, there's going to be people who are just upset with you criticizing them. You get what I'm saying? I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the analysts out there who sometimes take it a little bit too overboard and make it too personable. And they have to bring entertainment value because, I mean, like, there's a reason why talk show sports is starting to die out on cable. Because, like, why are we watching talk show sports on ESPN and FS1 paying for those channels when we can watch it for free on YouTube and you can watch me? You know, I'm not the most beautiful looking person, but, you know, I do think I have a pretty good voice for this. So I would think that you guys would like listening to me talk. I hope. But that's my thoughts on Keenan Allen calling out sports media. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comment section down below. And I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure that you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, upload NFL videos, college football videos daily. Also, make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast, available on every single podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. All you got to do is go to whichever podcasting provider you use or podcasting platform you use, type in the JT Sports Podcast and it will pop up. Make sure you leave a 5-star review. And I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast.